Can you imagine that the decision to adopt an animal could save your life? What if, without knowing it, that four-legged companion was destined to become your hero? This is the story of an extraordinary cat, Pudding, and the woman to whom he gave a second chance at life. It was a quiet night in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. AMY JUNG, a 36-year-old woman, was settling into her home after an ordinary day. What she never imagined was that her life would soon be hanging by a thread. The air was crisp, and the night breeze drifted in through the window. It was a day like any other, until everything changed. Just hours earlier, Amy had made a spontaneous decision. During a visit to an animal shelter with her son, she had fallen in love with a large orange cat with expressive eyes. There was something special about him, something she couldn't quite explain. Without hesitation, she adopted him and brought him home, never suspecting that this decision would alter the course of her destiny. Pudding was a big cat with orange fur and white patches, a gentle gaze, and an imposing presence. Despite his size, he had an innate sweetness. He moved gracefully, as if analyzing every corner of his new home with curiosity. His story at the shelter was a sad one. He had been abandoned, but never lost hope of finding a home. Amy had lived with type 1 diabetes since childhood. She knew how to manage her condition, but sometimes her body betrayed her. That night, after an exhausting day, she felt more tired than usual. She went to bed without suspecting that something was wrong. But as she slept, her blood sugar levels were dropping dangerously. As she slept, Amy's body fell into a severe hypoglycemic crisis. Her breathing became irregular, her hands trembled slightly, and a cold sweat soaked her skin. It was a critical moment. If she didn't receive help soon, she could fall into a coma and never wake up. That was when Pudding, who had only just arrived in his new home, sensed that something was terribly wrong. Animals have a special sensitivity, and this cat was about to prove it in an astonishing way. With unwavering determination, Pudding jumped onto the bed and positioned himself on Amy's chest. He began to meow loudly, trying to wake her up. His paws pressed insistently against her, as if he knew her life depended on it. When she didn't respond, he made a surprising decision. He gently nibbled her face, as if trying to pull her out of her daze. Amy barely reacted. She opened her eyes with difficulty, feeling the weight of the cat on top of her. Her mind was foggy, but deep down she knew something wasn't right. In her semi-conscious state, she managed to murmur her son's name, calling for help. Pudding, as if understanding that more help was needed, quickly ran to Ethan's room, Amy's son. He jumped onto the bed and urgently woke him up, meowing and tapping him gently with his paws. Ethan, confused by the cat's unusual behavior, sat up to see what was going on. When he saw his mother lying in bed, her face pale and lips turning blue, he immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Wasting no time, he called 911. Meanwhile, Pudding refused to leave Amy's side, as if he knew his presence was vital to her survival. The minutes felt like an eternity. Ethan tried to stay calm, but his heart was pounding in fear. He watched his mother, hoping for any sign of improvement, while Pudding remained vigilant, letting out soft, reassuring meows. It was as if he instinctively understood the gravity of the moment. Finally, the sound of an ambulance siren broke the silence of the night. Paramedics rushed into the bedroom, quickly assessing the situation. Ethan tried to explain what had happened, but what struck the paramedics the most was how the cat stayed right beside Amy, refusing to move. One of the paramedics, astonished by the feline's actions, remarked, "I've never seen anything like this. It's as if this cat knew what was happening before anyone else." They administered glucose to Amy and began stabilizing her condition. Slowly, her breathing improved, and the color returned to her face. Amy slowly opened her eyes. She felt weak but conscious. She saw Ethan by her side and, in a trembling voice, asked, "What happened?" Before her son could respond, she felt a warm weight on her chest. Pudding was there, gazing at her intently, his eyes filled with tenderness. That was when she realized what had happened. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stroked his soft fur. "You saved me," she whispered, feeling an unbreakable bond with the animal who, in less than a day, had become her guardian angel. The paramedic gently took her hand and said, "You're very lucky. If it weren't for your cat, you might not be here right now." Amy nodded, knowing those words were absolutely true. Pudding wasn't just her pet, he was her savior. But this story was far from over. What happened that night would forever change Amy's life and strengthen the extraordinary bond between her and her heroic cat. The following days were filled with recovery and deep reflection. Amy couldn't stop thinking about how Pudding had reacted that night. How did he know what to do? Was it instinct, or was it something deeper, a connection between them? There was no clear answer, but one thing Amy knew for certain. This cat had come into her life for a reason. Ethan also noticed something different about Pudding. The cat now watched over Amy even more closely, always alert to any sign of danger. He would curl up in her lap, and whenever she fell asleep, he stayed by her chest, as if he were still protecting her. Pudding's story quickly spread. Friends and family were amazed to hear the details, and soon the local community became fascinated by the incredible act of heroism from this remarkable cat. It wasn't long before a local news outlet picked up the story, and Amy was interviewed by the city newspaper. Then social media worked its magic. Pictures of Pudding and Amy went viral, and soon hundreds of people began sharing similar stories of animals who had saved lives. It became clear that the connection between humans and animals was deeper than many had ever imagined. But Pudding's impact didn't stop there. What had begun as a heroic act would soon transform into something even greater, a powerful message about the importance of pet adoption and the unbreakable bond between humans and their animals. As Pudding's story spread, messages began to pour in from people who had experienced similar moments with their pets. It became clear that the relationship between humans and animals had a profound dimension, one that science was only beginning to explore. Animal behavior experts were contacted by the media to help explain how a cat could detect such a serious medical emergency. A local veterinarian explained that cats have an extraordinary ability to perceive changes in their owner's behavior, from variations in body temperature to subtle shifts in scent that occur in critical situations. It's not magic, the specialist said. It's instinct combined with a deep connection between the animal and its human. As Amy's story gained attention, she began receiving invitations to speak at interviews and community events. Though she had never been someone who enjoyed public attention, she felt she had to do it, not just to honor Pudding, but to spread an important message. Animals don't just need homes, they can save lives. Ethan, who had always seen Pudding as a calm and affectionate cat, now looked at him differently. Every time he watched his mother rest, he noticed how Pudding remained close, attentively watching over her. There was no doubt in his mind anymore. Pudding wasn't just a pet, he was a guardian. Over time, Amy decided to become more involved in animal adoption campaigns. She returned to the shelter where she had found Pudding and shared her story with the volunteers. There, she met others who had given second chances to rescued animals and listened to stories that deeply moved her. The shelter soon organized a special event to promote the adoption of adult cats, a group often overlooked in favor of younger kittens. Amy was invited as the keynote speaker. Though she felt nervous at first, she found strength in the memory of that night, the night Pudding saved her life. The event was a resounding success. Several people decided to adopt cats after hearing Amy's story. One elderly woman approached her, tears in her eyes, and said, "I never considered adopting an adult cat before, but after hearing your story, I think I should give it a chance." Amy felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her experience was making a difference beyond her own life. Meanwhile, Pudding continued his role as protector at home. Every night before bed, Amy felt him curl up beside her, his soft purring serving as a constant reminder that she was never alone. Ethan, too, had grown even more affectionate toward Pudding, taking time to play with him and, in his own way, thank him for saving his mother's life. As the months passed, Amy decided to start writing about her experience in a personal blog. What began as a simple digital journal soon gained attention from thousands of people. Her words not only recounted Pudding's heroic act, but also emphasized the importance of paying attention to the signals animals give us. Messages of support poured in. Some people shared how, after reading her story, they had reconsidered adopting a shelter cat. Others recounted their own experiences with their pets, highlighting the incredible ability of animals to sense and respond to human emotions. One day, Amy received an unexpected email from a national organization dedicated to studying the relationship between humans and animals. They invited her to participate in a campaign aimed at promoting pet adoption and raising awareness about the role animals play in both emotional and physical health. She accepted without hesitation. Amy knew that this story was bigger than just her and Pudding. It was a message that needed to be shared. What had started as a mutual rescue between a woman and her cat had grown into a wave of inspiration that touched countless lives. But most importantly, each night, as Pudding curled up beside her and closed his eyes in peace, Amy knew she would never again underestimate the power of love between a human and their animal. Pudding's story had now gone beyond the local community. National media took an interest in his incredible feat, and before she knew it, Amy received an invitation to appear on a nationally broadcast television show. The idea of traveling and speaking in front of millions of people felt overwhelming, but deep down, she understood. This was a message that needed to be shared. On the day of the interview, Pudding accompanied her. At the studio, the production team was amazed by how calm and composed he was. When the show's host introduced their story, Pudding simply curled up in Amy's lap, as if he knew this moment was all about him. The audience was deeply moved as they listened to the remarkable tale of how a rescued cat had, in turn, become a rescuer. After the program, social media exploded with comments and messages from people thanking Amy for sharing her experience. Many confessed that, because of her story, they had decided to adopt a cat instead of buying one. Rescue organizations began receiving more adoption requests, and Pudding's story created a ripple effect across the country. As the impact of their story continued to grow, Amy was invited to collaborate with an animal-assisted therapy organization. She discovered that many cats were trained to provide emotional support to people struggling with anxiety, depression, or even specific medical conditions. Feeling deeply connected to this mission, Amy realized that Pudding could be part of something even bigger: Pudding's journey as a therapy cat. His training as a support animal began immediately. Though he already had a natural instinct for sensing changes in Amy's health, the process helped him respond to different stimuli and interact with others in need. His first session was with a 7-year-old boy who suffered from severe anxiety attacks. At their first meeting, the child gently stroked Pudding's fur and, for the first time in a long while, calmed down without needing medical intervention. Watching this moment deeply moved Amy. Pudding hadn't just saved her life. Now, he was changing the lives of others. Each time they visited hospitals or therapy centers, Pudding seemed to know exactly who needed him the most. He would curl up beside patients in wheelchairs, rub his head against the trembling hands of elderly individuals, and purr softly when a frightened child reached out to touch him. Doctors and therapists began to notice the positive changes in patients who interacted with Pudding. Simply petting his fur or listening to his purring had a calming effect on many people. Before long, he became a regular presence in various healthcare centers, where his visits were increasingly requested. But while Pudding continued his mission of providing support to others, Amy also experienced an internal transformation. She had learned to see life from a different perspective. Before that fateful night, she hadn't paid much attention to small details or stopped to reflect on the impact that a simple act of kindness could have on the world. Now, every day was a reminder that life in all its forms should be valued and protected. Ethan also felt different. He had gone from being a child who simply lived with a cat to a young man who understood the importance of the connection between humans and animals. He volunteered at the shelter where they had adopted Pudding and began helping socialize other cats who, like his four-legged hero, were waiting for a second chance. Pudding's impact continued to grow. One day, Amy received a letter from a mother thanking her. Her daughter, who had suffered from severe depression, found inspiration in Pudding's story and decided to adopt a cat. Since then, her mood had improved significantly. Pudding didn't just save you, the letter read. He has also saved many people you will never meet. That night, Amy lay in bed with Pudding by her side. As she gently stroked his fur, she felt a deep sense of peace in her heart. She knew that her story was not just about a cat saving his owner. It was about love, second chances, and the incredible power of the bonds we create with those who, without words, can change our lives forever. Days continued to pass and Pudding's impact kept growing. Amy began receiving invitations to speak at conferences about the connection between humans and animals. Her cat story was not only inspiring but also served as scientific proof of how animals can detect physiological changes in people. At one of these conferences, a neuroscience researcher approached Amy. He explained that studies had shown that cats could detect variations in blood sugar levels through their sense of smell. Without any training, Pudding had done what many service dogs take time to learn. Your cat has a gift, the expert told her, and the best part is he uses it to save lives. This revelation opened a new path for Amy. She decided to work alongside specialists to study Pudding's behavior and explore how his instincts could help other patients with diabetes. For several weeks, doctors and animal behavior experts observed Pudding, recording his reactions to changes in Amy's glucose levels. What they discovered was astonishing. Pudding instinctively reacted to blood sugar fluctuations long before any symptoms were noticeable. His behavior changed. He meowed more frequently and actively tried to alert Amy to any irregularities. The discovery was groundbreaking and quickly became a topic of interest within the medical community. Thanks to this, Amy became involved in a campaign to promote shelter cat adoption and advocate for training animals for medical assistance. Working alongside a team of experts, they developed a pilot program to train cats with similar abilities to Pudding, teaching them to detect changes in their owner's health. It was a challenge, but also an innovative project that had the potential to change lives. Meanwhile, at home, Amy and Ethan's lives continued to evolve. Pudding was no longer just a pet. He was family, always present at the most crucial moments. If Amy had a bad day, Pudding sensed it and stayed by her side, reminding her, through his quiet presence, that she was never alone. Letters and messages of gratitude kept pouring in. Some people shared how Pudding's story had inspired them to adopt an older cat instead of looking for a kitten. Others recounted experiences in which their own pets had shown surprising abilities to detect illnesses or provide comfort in difficult moments. Amy never imagined that her story would reach so many people. One day, Amy received a special invitation. A prestigious university wanted to honor her for her work in raising awareness about the role of animals in human health. She accepted with humility, knowing that everything she had achieved was thanks to the cat who, one day, simply climbed onto her chest to wake her up. The ceremony was deeply moving. When Amy walked onto the stage to receive the recognition, she carried Pudding in her arms. She couldn't help but feel emotional as she remembered how it all began, with a spontaneous decision to adopt a cat from a shelter. Looking out at the audience, her voice trembling with emotion, she said, "I never imagined that saving a cat would mean he would one day save my life. What I've learned is that every life matters. Every being has a purpose. And sometimes the greatest heroes have 4 paws and a heart full of love." The auditorium erupted in applause. Pudding, as if he understood the significance of the moment, gently rubbed his head against Amy's face. She held him close, knowing that their story was far from over. There were still more people to help, more lives to touch, and more hearts to inspire. Time passed, and though life moved forward, Amy never stopped feeling grateful for the day she decided to adopt Pudding. Her work in raising awareness about the importance of animals in human health continued. But beyond all the public recognition, what truly mattered was the unbreakable bond she had formed with her cat. Pudding grew old by Amy's side. His movements became slower, his fur took on silver streaks, and his naps grew longer. But his protective instinct never faded. Every night he still curled up next to Amy, purring softly, making sure everything was all right. Ethan grew up and left home to follow his own dreams. But before he departed, he gave Pudding a long, heartfelt hug. "Take care of her for me, old friend," he whispered. As if he understood, Pudding rubbed his head against Ethan's hand, offering a silent promise before watching him leave. One day, Pudding fell asleep in his favorite spot, the same place where he used to watch over Amy while she worked or read. His breathing was calm, his expression peaceful. When Amy approached and stroked him, she knew their time together was coming to an end. With tears in her eyes, she held him in her arms and whispered words of love and gratitude. "Thank you for everything, my hero," she said softly. "You will always be a part of me." Pudding passed away with the same serenity with which he had entered her life, leaving behind a legacy of love, courage, and hope. Amy felt a deep emptiness, but above all, immense gratitude. She knew that this cat had changed her life in more ways than she could ever count. Months passed, and though the pain never fully disappeared, Amy found comfort in the memories and the mission Pudding had left her. She continued helping shelters, promoting adoption, and advocating for the vital role of animals in human health. And deep in her heart, she knew that somewhere her 4-legged friend was proud of her. One afternoon, while visiting a shelter, a small tabby cat approached her and curled up in her lap, gazing at her with the same tenderness Pudding had shown the first time they met. Amy smiled through tears, knowing that she could never replace her hero, but she understood that love always finds a way to return. Pudding hadn't just saved a life that fateful night, he had changed countless more. His story lived on in every person he had inspired, in every animal adopted because of his legacy, and in Amy's heart, where he would always have an eternal place. Because some heroes don't wear capes or carry swords. They simply have soft fur and a heart full of unconditional love. And Pudding, without a doubt, was one of them. And so, we conclude another incredible story of courage and heroism. On your channel, Animal Heroes, we celebrate all those extraordinary beings who, regardless of their species, have shown incredible bravery. If this story inspired you, don't forget to leave us a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more amazing tales. See you in the next adventure where heroism knows no limits.